name is Jan Foreman. Welcome to Daily Hope. Today we're looking at Luke chapter 18, which strings together several stories about two opposite kinds of people, the haves and the have-nots. The haves are, first of all, a person who is spiritually wealthy. Verse 9 says he was confident of his own righteousness and looked down on everybody else. In fact, when he prayed, he basically just thanked God for himself and his impeccable life. The second have is a person who had great material wealth. Another gospel calls him a rich young ruler. So think Hollywood lifestyle with lots of fancy cars, expensive clothes, maybe several houses. Now, in contrast to this, we have the have-nots. The first one is a poor woman who had just lost her husband, and she's also the victim of an unjust legal system. Next, we meet a person who has so ruined his life and the lives of others by sin, he won't even raise his head to cry out to God for help. The third have-nots are babies, infants who are completely helpless. And then we have the disciples who've left everything to follow Jesus. And finally, we meet the blind beggar. He lives day by day by day on the stranger's generosity. Now, who do you suppose are the real winners in God's kingdom? The haves or the have-nots? We recently went hiking in Mammoth Lakes, and at the top of the mountains we saw the snowpack, and then we saw it flowing down into streams and then waterfalls and then lakes, and finally that water made its way down into the valley. And that's what God's kingdom is like. It always flows down to the lowest places. We don't mostly meet God on the summits. We meet him in the valleys, the valley of injustice and loss, like the widow, or the valley of recognizing our horrible mistakes, like the sorrowful man, or the valley of just being helpless, like an infant in Jesus' arms, or the valley of desperate dependence, like the blind beggar. And Jesus summarizes all these folks in verse 16 with his description of babies. Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. The kingdom of God belongs to the desperate, the have-nots. So who are you today? Who am I today? In reality, we're all have-nots, but we don't always like to lean into that story. So let's loop back to the example of the widow. Her persistence wore down that corrupt and uncaring judge until he finally gave her justice. So Jesus adds in verses 7 and 8, and will not God, who's not unjust and uncaring but loving, bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. The streams of God will eventually flow down into your valley. It's kingdom gravity. But then Jesus throws down a challenge for you and me. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? Will he find you and me still crying out for help in those low places? In one of his sermons, Martin Luther King described some folks as practical atheists, those who say they believe in God, but live by their own resources as if he doesn't exist. The widow knew that judge had power, and so she persisted. When we know God's love and power, we keep crying out in the valley, in the low place, because we know he will meet us there and answer our prayers. And that's how the have-nots get transformed into the haves, by persistent prayer. And that's our encouragement for today, to keep coming. Now I want to invite you to join us this weekend for our online services or for the gathering at 9 a.m. Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us.